Same.
Hello to everyone. Thank you. And as I understand, we can start. This is the last panel. My name is Christopher Russell. I'm a member or board member at Media Initiative for Human Rights, and I'm really happy to be moderating our last panel. Can Latin America contribute to justice in Ukraine? What our plan was to speak in English, but also in Spanish. So if you don't have any devices for translation, you can pick them up there. So
Important number of sessions these last 2 days, and I don't know how many of you coming from legal backgrounds or lawyers in the audience, but for me, when I was hearing these sessions, I couldn't help but to reflect on the role of international law in addressing all of these issues. We've heard about some cases of domestic courts addressing issues to counter these injustices, these attacks on our friends in Kherson, on attacks on our journalist friends, and we've heard fair criticisms about the inability sometimes of international law to address violations of international humanitarian law. And indeed, this is a bit of a troubling moment when we consider rule of law backsliding across various countries today, attacks on international criminal justice institutions such as the International Criminal Court, and we have, some challenges in front of us in accountability for the numerous war crimes that are being committed every day. And we also have some positive developments ahead, though. And I think that this last session we can discuss some really important, fascinating achievements and developments that are coming in international justice to address many of these war crimes, violations of international humanitarian law. And it frankly ties right into the topic of Latin America, because Latin America is indeed emerging as one of the most promising regions for broader international support to Ukraine, and our discussion will highlight Latin America's role in supporting justice. And there's a few key themes I think we'll address this evening, and one being the legal architecture and legal relations between Ukraine and Latin America, and the role of Latin American states in supporting the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression, the implementation of perhaps ICC arrest warrants, and human rights situations across Latin America as well. We'll have some discussion on perspectives from Latin American viewpoints across various states in Latin America, and actually anticipate that we'll encounter some uniting threads and similarities, parallels perhaps between Latin America's experience in accountability for human rights violations or other grave crimes, and the ongoing efforts of the justice sector here in Ukraine to address those issues. So we have a lot ahead of us, and with that, it's a pleasure for me really to introduce such a esteemed panel we have both here in person and online. First, well, it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Anton Kornievich. Dr. Kornievich is the director of the Department of International Law at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. He is a leading Ukrainian international lawyer, specializing in public international law, international humanitarian law, international criminal law. And, well, Dr. Kornievich has been instrumental in his role as coordinating the core group on the establishment of the Special Tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about his work on that. So welcome, Dr. Kornievich. Yeah, please. Next, joining us online, I should introduce Dr. Felipe Alamino. And Dr. Alamino is postdoctoral researcher at the University of Sao Paulo, and founding member of the study group on the international protection of minorities at that university. He's co-organizer of the Permanent Forum on Genocide and Crimes Against Humanity. And additionally, we'll be hearing from him on his really fascinating publication, The Annexation of Crimea, the Concept of Aggression in International Law. So Dr. Alamino, welcome to you as well. Good evening. Next, Uria Fancelli, who we've heard from earlier yesterday. Welcome back to the stage, Uria. And Uria, as we know, is a journalist and an international relations analyst. He's the author of Populism and Denialism, a best-selling book in Brazil, contributing to expanding work he has and scholarship he has on democracy and authoritarianism. So Mr. Fancelli, we know from his political commentary on CNN and Al Jazeera, Global News, and many others. So welcome, Uria, as well. Good evening. Yeah. Back online, we welcome Dr. Hugo Rojas from Chile. Dr. Rojas is a professor of sociology of law, transitional justice, and political sociology at Alberto Hurtado University. Dr. Rojas earned his doctorate from Oxford and a PhD in law from the University of Salamanca, and has made many scholarly contributions to the body of human rights law in Latin America. So I'm expecting his contributions to be incredibly fascinating as well. Dr. Rojas, I guess, buenas tardes. Good evening from Kyiv. Nice to see you as well. Welcome. And lastly, last but not least, Mr. Ignacio Montes de Oca, welcome as well. Mr. Ignacio Montes is a journalist and documentary producer, and throughout his career, he's contributed to just a wide variety of documentaries on fascinating cultural issues affecting Latin America. You can find these on the History Channel, National Geographic, the Discovery Channel, and also I should mention your book publication, Tierra de Nadie, No Man's Land, which is a really interesting account on the Falklands War that affected Argentina. So welcome, Mr. Ignacio Montes as well. Thank you. Well, with that said, I think enough talking from my side. Let's move on to our first guest, and that's Dr. Kornievich. We're really fortunate to have you with us today. I'm wondering if we can maybe start with some overview on the international law developments affecting the Special Tribunal on the Crime of Aggression, its connection to justice, to Latin America. You know, what's interesting about this Crime of Aggression Tribunal is it's housed in the Council of Europe, but people may not know that there's indeed Latin American states that are supporting it. If you could maybe talk about your work in establishing this tribunal and the important role of Latin American states contributing to it. Please, the floor is yours.
Good evening, dear colleagues. Thank you so much, dear Christopher. It's a big pleasure and honor to be here today with you, and it's really great that so many of you stayed here this late time, and that accountability is part of this conference. It is really very important and very much appreciated. And of course, I'm foremost grateful to the organizers of the conference, to the Media Initiative for Human Rights, and of course to the mission of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. When I look at the mission, I feel really happy. So it's great that this initiative for the third year in a row, and I hope and I'm sure that it will be a fruitful event throughout the coming years. So I will talk about international law and accountability as a legal advisor of Ukraine. And starting with the Special Tribunal, I think that the most important thing which we should discuss and explain here during this panel is that the tribunal is not only the European initiative. So it is housed within the Council of Europe. So it will work under the auspices of the Council of Europe, the biggest European regional organization. But it doesn't mean that it is closed to our partners and friends from other regions, in particular from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and other regions of the world. The auspices and the platform of the Council of Europe was chosen as the most fruitful and effective and legitimate way to establish a special tribunal. Again, due to many, many factors, which I'm sure we should not discuss here today because we have a lot of great speakers and great topics. But many of them, like Russia was a member of the Council of Europe both in 2014 and 2022. Russia was sent out from the Council of Europe because of the full-scale invasion. Council of Europe has both moral, political and legal grounds to work on the issue of accountability for the Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So many of these factors really led us all to the idea that the tribunal should be established on the basis of agreement between Ukraine and the Council of Europe. So the main document, founding document, is a document between two subjects of international law. But the inalienable element of the founding documents of the Special Tribunal is in large partial agreement on the Management Committee of the Special Tribunal. This is the agreement which is yet not in force, which we now currently are finalizing. And by the way, I really hope that by the end of this year, we will be able to finalize its text and maybe then to think about its most efficient adoption throughout the beginning of the next year. But this enlarged partial agreement will be open to any country in the world. So any country which is a member state of the Council of Europe, any country which is in other regions of the world. So states from Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, Eastern Asia, they will be able to become members or associate members of the Management Committee, make contributions to the activity of the Special Tribunal, participate in the Management Committee, have a representative there, so have a voting right for judges, for prosecutor, for adoption of a budget, for any procedural thing. So for us, this enlarged partial agreement on the Management Committee is an instrument which makes tribunal, our Special Tribunal, a multilateral mechanism. So this is really very important, and that is why we work hard with our partners in other regions to get them on board. And of course, support of intellectuals, of experts from the regions is of utmost importance. So we would greatly appreciate talks in capitals throughout the regions, in particular in Latin America, to talk with us, with Ukraine's legal team, on the matter of the Special Tribunal, and in particular on the matter of possible joining the EPA. So the doors are open, and the tribunal is not linked only to Europe itself. So I believe this is very important. Throughout the work of the core group, we had two Latin American, Central American actually states participating in the work of the core group. We really very much appreciate their input and efforts. So these are Costa Rica and Guatemala. And now all the work on the finalization of the enlarged partial agreement itself and other matters, it is done in the Working Party GT Tribunal in Strasbourg within the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. And there we also now have Costa Rica from the last meeting of the core group. So GT Tribunal is also very open to participation of states from other regions. So we will be happy to see any country from Latin America interested in this endeavor. Very open, very glad to see initiatives and interests in these things. If I may, throughout the time allocated to myself, I would also point out maybe several other issues where Latin America as a region and different states of the region can be of importance for us. So another lacune or loophole which we are now trying to fulfill is the issue of compensations and the initiative to establish the international compensation mechanism. Here, as many of you here in this room know, we already have the Register of Damage, which has already been established and which is now functioning in The Hague. Register of Damage is open to any country of the world. For instance, Australia was the latest country to join the register. Australia is also not in Europe, apparently. So if Latin American states, governments, do have initiatives, if the expert communities there can talk and spread the news about the possibility to join the Register of Damage, this would be of utmost importance also. So mechanism is open. And the second point on this compensations work, and the second element of the international compensation mechanism after the Register of Damage is the International Claims Commission. And here we do have now a very important date, 16th of December this year, when in The Hague, the Open Convention on the International Claims Commission will be signed. It should be, we hope, a huge day, a huge celebration of law and justice, and we hope to see there in The Hague a lot of leaders of states which will, in this very day, sign the convention. Again, this procedure is open to any country of the world. So whenever we can also think about Latin American friends joining the signing of the International Claims Commission Convention, and then the convention itself with ratification, with participation in the conference, this would be, of course, of utmost importance. So, as Special Tribunal is established within the Council of Europe, Council of Europe also plays a leading role in the Register of Damage and in the establishment of the International Claims Commission. But both mechanisms are open, totally open, for states from other regions. And maybe one last point, which I wanted to flag from the very beginning, as again, to throw it into this jar of our discussion, is of course the International Criminal Court, which you know that Ukraine is now a member of. Ukraine ratified the Rome Statute, became the 125th state party of the Rome Statute. So for us, of course, it is very important that the orders of arrest of the ICC for Russian nationals are executed whenever the Russian nationals visit the states which do have obligations before the International Criminal Court as the ICC member states. So 6 nationals, 6 orders of arrest, including for Vladimir Putin. So of course, it is of utmost importance that he himself and other Russian alleged war criminals do not feel that they can openly travel throughout the regions of the world, in particular to Latin America, and that there is no threat for them of being detained and then sent out to The Hague. So it is of utmost importance that all the member states of the ICC, all the states parties of the Rome Statute, execute their obligations before the ICC, including, of course, the states from Latin America, because sometimes we see and hear some rumors about possible visits, about possible contacts. So, of course, it's very important to keep international law at the very heart of all these discussions. And also one last point on the ICC. We all, of course, know how the ICC is threatened now due to some sanctions of some states. And as of now, these sanctions are individual. There is a possibility that individual sanctions will be then, to them will be added institutional sanctions. And with institutional sanctions, there might be some challenges to, in particular, the activity of the International Criminal Court in relation to the investigation of the situation in Ukraine and functioning of the ICC country office here in Kyiv. So for Ukraine, it is of great importance that no matter what happens with the sanctions, hopefully institutional will not be adopted, but nevertheless, no matter what happens, that the ICC remains active and effective on the investigation of the situation in Ukraine, that its country office here in Kyiv is operational and everything works smoothly. So we are now heading up to the Assembly of States Parties of the ICC, which will take place in the beginning of December in The Hague. So it is really important that states, which are states parties to the Rome Statute, join together in this call and active work on efficient ICC keeping its operations. Ukraine always talks in relation to the ICC only about investigation of the situation in Ukraine. We do not make comments on other situations. We are interested in keeping the ICC active in our case. So this is again where Ukraine, together with states from Latin America, with the support of expert society, civil society, NGOs, human rights activists, intellectuals, where we can all contribute to this keeping ICC an effective organ of international criminal justice. I think I will stop here. I think it's pretty much ideal. And I will be happy to try to answer any questions or comments if they appear. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kornievich. From the audience. With that presentation having been made, it's actually a really convenient segue into the next discussion from our online participant, Dr. Alamino. Dr. Alamino, if you're with us, you've just heard Dr. Kornievich's comments on the Special Tribunal of the Crime of Aggression. I'll turn the floor to you. It's perhaps a good segue, given that your research on Crimea has focused on the annexation and looking at that as a crime of aggression. So I turn it over to you, please.
Well, thank you. Good evening, my dear colleagues. Good evening, you all. It's a pleasure to be here with you today at this conference. Before speaking about before starting my speech, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers of the Crimea Global and for their kind invitation today. Unfortunately, due to agenda issues, I could not be present in Ukraine, and I would especially thank Mr. Russo, who is leading today's discussion. In the course of my research, I have dealt, as you may know, with the problem of the Crimea annexation by the Russian Federation in 2014, and the legal consequences of it. As you may know, there's no aggression treaty, no binding aggression treaty worldwide. Therefore, we use only the 3314 resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, which revives in a certain way the concept of the Politis Litvinov formula, stated at the Convention for the Definition of Aggression from 1933, which was concluded among several states, among them the Soviet Union, for instance. In this resolution, which we may say that as it's a General Assembly resolution, it has no binding force, it's no legally binding. However, it institutes that the aggression is the use of an armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state, or in any other manner in consonance with the Charter of the United States, of the United Nations, sorry. Still, it says that the first use of armed force by a state in contravention to the Charter may constitute prima facie evidence of an act of aggression. In the 80s, the International Court of Justice, in the case concerning military and paramilitary activities in and against Nicaragua, which was judging the issue against Nicaragua and the United States, although this resolution 3314 may not be legally binding due to its resolution, this case stated that this resolution has a customary principle. Therefore, it is called as customary law, which may become it binding for each and every state. Therefore, we can prosecute states when they commit acts of aggression. And we may say that we could prosecute and try individuals as well. It won't be any nonsense to say it, or anything new in international law, as there was a trial, attempt of trial of the Wilhelm I, the Kaiser of Germany after the First World War. And it continued with this aspect in international law until the Kampala amendments to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. However, the Kampala amendments was not ratified by many countries. You may know that since the beginning of since the issue of the Kampala amendments, we have less than 50 countries that have ratified it. And speaking specifically from South America, I must say that here Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru have ratified the document. Well, you may have noticed that I'm Brazilian and I didn't mention my country. And yes, we are a kind of an island in the continent, and Brazil, maybe because we have faced some turbulences in the last years, internal turbulences, I may say, but we did not ratify, or there's no idea of ratification of this document in the next days or months. Therefore, this document has no legal consequences for us. The crime of aggression in Brazil is, I would say, that's inexistent. And it would be no surprise when we are talking about Brazilian domestic law. For instance, as you may know, Brazil is a member of the International Criminal Court, and it is binded with three crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, but no aggression. So if the ICC sends a arrest warrant to Brazil, it is obliged to execute it. Nevertheless, to try or to prosecute and try any person in Brazil for genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes, it's almost impossible or difficult. Brazil has only in its domestic law has only recognized the crime of genocide, and these due to the convention from the 40s, which was called the Conventions to Prevent and the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide of 1948. And these turned to be domestic law since 1956. Sorry, I lost you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we still hear you. You're still with us.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Because I'm not seeing anything now. It's just my pic. It's okay. So Brazil has only in its domestic law genocide as a international crime. We have faced several opportunities, such as the conventions about war crimes or the conventions about crimes against humanity, but Brazil did not ratify it or turned it to be domestic law. And even though we are a member of the International Criminal Court, we did not make, as I must say, our homework, which would be to turn these international crimes into domestic crimes as well. Therefore, there's I may say a hole in our domestic legislation, as we may we may execute arrest warrants that come from the ICC to Brazil, but we cannot prosecute or try any person in Brazil for these crimes. And this turns out to be very difficult in order to work with the legal consequences of a future aggression, crimes of aggression court. I won't give you answers, but I'll pose you questions. Would Brazil participate it? If so, would Brazil, in order to participate, legislate into domestic law the crime of aggression? Unfortunately, I don't think so. We have had a lot of time to turn international crimes into domestic crimes in Brazil. And I must say, crimes against humanity would be great to Brazil in order to make peace with its past of dictatorship, and to prosecute the dictators in Brazil and people who had committed international crimes in Brazil during those years, and we had not. Therefore, I don't think that although Brazil may execute and work with the International Criminal Court whenever it asks Brazil to execute any warrant, I don't think that Brazil would turn our legislation able to, inside at domestic level, prosecute these criminals or even participate in other courts, as we are not fulfilling our domestic needs. I would like to give you more happy and wishful thoughts about about our future with criminal law. However, I may bring you these bad comments about Brazil's legislation. Well, I think I will stop here, and I am at your disposal for any questions or comments at the end of our panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Alomino, for your presentation. Thank you. Well, I think that rhetorical question you asked is an important one, and it really requires some further consideration of the context within Brazil. And well, we have a speaker with us next who can really jump into these issues of public perception, how Brazilians perceive the war, how Brazilians perceive justice processes given their rich cultural legacy and traditions in Latin America. And I mean, I think we'll focus a bit on media as well, and the importance of informing the Brazilian public and society about the reality to the war in Ukraine right now, because some recent research, I think I should indicate here from the Media Initiative for Human Rights, it found that in the last 8 months alone, there were 76,000 references to the war in Ukraine. And that's about 3 times more than the combined total of both Asia and Africa. So the importance of Brazilian perception and information on the war and how that might influence, as Dr. Alomino was saying, the cultural understanding of justice and legislation and codification of different international crimes really go hand in hand. So it's a pleasure to introduce Ria Fancelli again. So Ria, please, we're so curious to hear about the perceptions and understandings from within Brazil, please.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry for you. It's the second day, 6 in the afternoon, and you have to hear 2 Brazilians in a row. You know, I know everybody's tired, but I'm gonna try to make it as light as I can, because I know that everything we're talking about here, they're all very difficult things. So I'll try my best. If we could put, please put the presentation there. I can change here and try to make it a little bit more dynamic so you all don't fall asleep. And then I'll get started. Is it there yet? Oh yes, there you are. See, everybody's awake. That's the last page. Yeah. Well, we'll start from the back. It's fine. So, as Felipe was saying there, Brazil is in a very particular political situation. Why? Because it's a very fertile ground for authoritarian leaders. Can you see the dates there? There was maybe a week, more or less, before the full-scale invasion. It took place. Everybody knew that it was about to happen. A lot of different diplomatic bodies from different countries had already moved their staff from Ukraine. They, they called people back because they knew that something was coming. It was something that was dangerous. Even still, this guy there, Jair Bolsonaro, who is now convicted for trying to stage a coup, as you can see, he also likes other authoritarian leaders. He decided to keep his visit to Moscow. And he belongs to the Brazilian far right. And there are some values that are very important for the Brazilian far right. As for instance, freedom of speech. But he's with someone who, doesn't really like freedom of speech. He doesn't really like freedom of press. So we thought that by having an election, things would be very different. And then this guy came along. Wait, where is he? Yes, this guy came along. As you can see, this picture is more recent. It happened in May this year. I think it was the most important date for Russia this year. They had a military parade. And the new Brazilian president, who belongs to the left, that really appreciates some values such as human rights, that has a very huge trauma of something called military dictatorship, authoritarianism. The left, they defend those values. But he decided to keep his visit to Russia. So what do I mean by that? That in a highly polarized country such as Brazil, Russia is able to speak with both sides when they are part of the mainstream of the Brazilian politics. And then now I can go to the beginning of my presentation because I started from the end. I'm going to hear it for you guys. I want to read you some headlines from some Brazilian outlets. Not in Portuguese, don't worry. I'm not going to do that to you. But this one said, I'll just read it from here. It says, Putin uses 287 missiles and drones in the largest attack of the Ukrainian war. And this headline was referring to something that happened almost 1 year ago. On the 13th of December, Russia attacked Ukraine at 10:26 in the morning. It was -5 degrees. A lot of millions of brave Ukrainians were running to the shelter. And then 10,000 kilometers away from here, this Brazilian journalist, he decides that he is entitled to write this. And why this is so concerning? Because if you look at, like in the first look, at a first glance, it seems like a normal headline. You don't follow the Ukrainian war, so in a close-by way. It's not something that you read about every day. So basically, you think that you're being informed by this. But the devil is in the details. And there are a lot of details here. The first one would be that under the main headline, he said that action against the energy system was revenge for the use of American missiles and a measure by Biden that Trump called crazy. And that the journalist also highlighted that there were no deaths reported. So basically, you believe that he said the most important things about this piece. That it was a major attack, that Putin was associated with this attack, and that the targets were energy targets. Part of it is true, part of it is not. But the thing is that when he suggests that Russia's action was a revenge from something that the Ukrainians had done in advance, he's suggesting that Russia is only reacting, not that it's actually starting the war, not that it's provoking, that is escalating the war. And there are also many different other very concerning things that come in this single, the single piece. So one of them is that he basically, throughout the, I'm not going to read the entire text for you, but he says that, he insinuates that the fault should be blamed on the West and on Ukraine too. He highlights that Trump calls it a madness, but if you have so little space there, why, instead of trying to explain the context of why Ukraine decided to use the Atacams against Russia in the first place, why do you decide to only put Trump's reaction, calling it a madness? So he somehow legitimates the Russian narrative that Ukraine is responsible for the war. And there are other very concerning informations, but I'm not going to take all of the time to say that. And what shocks me the most is that it was published not in any kind of, small website, not anything. I'm talking about Folha de São Paulo. It is today I would say the most respected newspaper in Brazil. It attracts 100, according to their own data, 114 million unique visitors per month, that together they read about 7.4 billion pages. And according to news reports from Reuters, 54% of Brazilians believe that this outlet is trustworthy. But I'm not saying this to attack Folha de São Paulo, because in fact, if you compare it with all the other outlets in Brazil, and I also have a table that I will show you in the end, I just don't want to get lost in the slides. Among 16 Brazilian outlets, Folha de São Paulo, who normally has a very good stance and covers in a very good way the Ukraine-Russia war, it's among 16 outlets, it was the one that least propagated Russia propaganda. So out of 16, he was in the best position. Because there are some other outlets that do worse things. As for example, one that is called Brasil 247. It's unbelievable, the kind of things that they write. And they're very read mostly by the Brazilian left. One of their headlines, recent one from November 7, it said that Ukraine is strengthening its war arsenal and making negotiations harder. Kiev, because they always use the Russian spelling, is seeking missiles and fighter jets from NATO countries. But Donald Trump has been indifferent to the plan. Another one. Business in Ukraine. Ukraine's European and American military allies are supplying Kiev with weapons equipment that ultimately turn against us all. So Ukraine and the West is now putting everybody else in the world in danger. Third one, all from the same website, from 2 days ago, this one. The United States is already looking for a replacement for Zelensky, says former Ukrainian Prime Minister, Minister Azarov. See who you cite. You choose exactly who will say whatever pleases your ideology. According to the former premier, so they don't say who it is, what kind of political stance he has inside Ukraine, how he views this war, but they portray him as if he was almost a representative of the mainstream Ukraine opinion, as if every single Ukrainian believes in things like that. And just one more. Political scientist says Europe does not have the strength to confront Russia. I'm sure that if this guy who says it's from the University of Chicago, then, well, he must be right. So this is the way that Russia propaganda works in Latin America and in Brazil specifically. Because this website, with all these headlines, and headlines that look like a joke, they look like a joke. Only in 2023, in more than 5,600 articles from Sputnik were spread in many different websites. And this one, Brasil 247, was responsible for 43%. It has nearly 10 million readers every month. And to close that, I think that that's the way that Russia propaganda works, because they always try to find legitimacy within local news vehicles that are perceived as respected, but they're actually infiltrated there. And how it relates to everything we're discussing with justice, it's because if you want the public, the population of these countries, of these Latin American countries, to demand from their leaders that they do enough policies, that they approve certain laws to make war criminals accountable for their crimes, it has to come from people that people need to understand what is going on, so they can demand that changes, domestic changes are made. And they will not demand this if they are deceived by international propaganda, by Russian propaganda. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Yeah, indeed. It's a very fascinating perspective from Brazil. I like how you tied it nicely into this discussion on war crimes and the ICC justice mechanisms and the Special Tribunal on the crime of aggression. I think one additional institution or body of international law that we will come to next in the next conversation with Dr. Hugo Rojas will be human rights law. And that's perhaps one area he can expand upon, given Chile's experience in documenting and addressing human rights violations. And following this historic judgment of the European Court of Human Rights, which came recently, there were massive implications there and findings on the human rights, systemic human rights violations that occurred in Crimea. So I think it's a good segue now into Dr. Rojas's presentation. So Dr. Rojas, if you're with us, I'll hand over the floor to you. Great.
Thank you so much. I would like to share a PowerPoint. Thank you so much for the invitation. And it's difficult to speak after two wonderful Brazilians, but I'll try my best. I will share now I hope you can see the presentation.
Not yet.
Is it?
Now we see it. Great.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. So I will, briefly, in my 10 minutes, I would like to share with you 4 important lessons from the Chilean experience that could help strengthening human rights protection in Ukraine. First of all, I want to refer to the lessons we have learned in Latin America on how to document human rights violations. 6 years ago, a group of scholars from Ibero-Americana University in Mexico, Javeriana University in Colombia, University of London Goldsmith, and Alberto Hurtado University conducted 36 interviews with civil society organizations and also with public institutions that documented cases and built archives, which are very valuable today. We systematized those interviews and wrote a document that I'm sharing with you. This presentation, the organizers already have it, so you can have the full document. Because of time, I cannot go over the 64 recommendations. They're very concrete and could help on how to document, how to protect the information, how to decide what to do regarding data protection, how to inform family members about it, who has access to these files, how to use these records in judicial proceedings, and also to conduct some intelligence work and so on. So these lessons I consider highly valuable for Ukraine, Crimea at this moment. So I'm gonna leave it for now here, but I want to emphasize how important it is to keep a parallel registration system from civil society in collaboration with the government. There you can see the themes we work are 10, how we plan a registration system, how we engage citizens' participation, how we build a robust system collaborating among the different institutions, how we define the content of the files of the registrations we're doing. The use of technologies is essential for these actions right now, how we protect and preserve with a high quality all of this information, who has access, how we disseminate and use them now, for example, in education purposes. So never again human rights are violated in Chile. Then training and lessons. I must say that the interviews were not only conducted in Chile, also in Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico. Now, the second component of my presentation that I want to share with you is how we're using artificial intelligence and new technologies. And here we are working with several institutions from the state of Chile, but also from civil society, like the Vicariate of Solidarity or Londres 38 or No Buscamos. And also, we are collaborating with similar teams that are in Argentina, in Uruguay, and Mexico. It's an interdisciplinary work with people from history, social science, human rights, computer science, etc. So I want to share some of the work we're doing. We have different formats, photos, documents, and audios, and we convert all of this material into text and from text to entities, and this help us building graph of knowledge. Of course, we can rely completely in artificial intelligence, and we are evaluating every step. So this is a human in the loop. We have students helping us validating if our findings are correct. And let me show you how this works. These are events. Then we have the different formats: audio, photograph, letters, documents, official records. All of this is converted into a huge corpus of information where we have the entities. So what's the idea? We ask questions about any person, then immediately we will look for all the records we have. And so, for example, if we ask for a person known as Pedro Gomez, then the answer we get immediately in a second is that he was arrested in the National Stadium, and we have the evidence instantly, and also we have the photograph. So that's what we're trying to do, building from all thousands and thousands of sources to get everything set. For example, now we're reviewing criminal cases 50 years ago, and this is an example I prepared for you. Juan Quiñones, he was arrested in 1976. He was 31 years old, and he disappeared and has never been found. So we put all the information into a knowledge graph. Here are names of people who were connected with him, locations, actions are in the lines marking with writing in black. This is the knowledge graph of just one person, Quiñones, who is at the center. We already know the entities, and we can get instant answers. For example, in this case, we are asking the computer if he can give us a chronology of the judicial cases related to Quiñones. And in 1 second, we have a full explanation. I have to be honest with you. Before using artificial intelligence, I was doing all of this work manually, and it took months just to analyze one case. These human rights cases in Chile that have been with us for more than 50 years could have more than 10,000, 20,000 pages. So to analyze each case, it takes forever. And right now in Chile, we have 1,050 human rights cases that are pending in our courts. So we have to speed up because victims who didn't survive, who survived, sorry, are getting old and dying. Also, the perpetrators and the witness. So we're really we are really running out of time. So I'm sharing all of this with you because I think it is essential to work with artificial intelligence and the new technologies. Of course, you have to be cautious, and I will share part of the safeguards we are using with our work. But to write this summary, and it honestly, it could take a full month of my work, and right now I'm getting it in 1 second. And the same if I ask questions trying to find out where this Mr. Quiñones was, and I get a full knowledge of the locations where he was observed, where he was detained, where he disappeared. I also get responses. For example, if I ask who was involved in Quiñones' death, there's a specific answer in this example. Someone, the nickname is El Loco, the name of the perpetrator is Jose Pernau, and then I get access to the sources and then an explanation. It tells me exactly the page of my archive where I'm getting the evidence. Here is a question about who really was the perpetrator of Juan Quiñones, and so on. So I'll leave it there. That's the second aspect that I wanted to share with you. I imagine you're using full technology, but I have to say we are developing our own programs. We are not relying on Google or servers that we do not control. Everything has to be prepared domestically in our own facilities with our own masters and PhD students, because this is all sensitive material. We do not want it to end in any large corporation in the world that could have access to this. The third part of my presentation, I want to share with you that in Latin America, we have developed a robust corpus of theory and empirical work on human rights, mainly based on the decisions taken by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And I suggest Ukrainian experts to pay attention on the developments here, because you can invoke them later on in your cases. You can check the strategies used by those victims who are demanding their states, and also to analyze the responses coming from the state officials in these strategic litigation cases. I'm going to share now 5 important ideas that could be used for you. And in the next slide, I'm going to share the most important cases. As I said, you have the PowerPoint and the material is in English, and you can analyze it carefully later on. The first thing I want to share is, according to the Inter-American human rights system, self-amnesty laws are not applicable. They contravene the American Convention on Human Rights. The second has to do with the statute of limitation. In crimes against humanity, it does not correspond to talk about statute of limitation. That is known in our legal system as the non-prescriptibility principle. I also want to share with you that gender perspective enter the jurisprudence of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and it's important to combat impunity committed and actions committed against women. I also think the developments in the notion of the civil compensation for the families and the victims is relevant. So you need experts in civil law and torts. And also, finally, in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights is this new concept that we use known as comprehensive reparation. So it's not just reparation alone. This needs to be integral, comprehensive for all victims and families. So we have very good cases that you could look later on. These are 15. These are the ones that I would suggest you to study more carefully to get the reasoning behind the arguments of the judges that accepted the demands coming from the victims. So there are cases against the state of Chile, the state of Peru, state of Mexico, state of Brazil, El Salvador, Guatemala, Argentina, Colombia. So there's a different countries in Latin America that didn't respect human rights of their citizens, and now they are being sanctioned by the Court of Human Rights, Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And the last point I would like to share with you is some insights from Chile's experience in pursuing transitional justice. And I'm sorry if I'm not going to share some wonderful news with you. The first concern is that the transitional justice process can span several decades. So it is essential to prepare for an intergenerational horizon. I encourage you to start working right now with younger generation, trespassing the information and the decisions taken already to them so they are prepared to take the post in a few years and follow the work you're doing right now. That has happened to us after 35 years of transitional justice in Chile, and we continue until we find the remains of those who disappeared. The second, it is crucial to monitor what are the progresses or achievements and what are the pending challenges in the 5 pillars of transitional justice. As you know, the notion of transitional justice considers 5 pillars. One is, what are we doing in the search for truth? The second, how are we sanctioning those who are responsible? The third is, what are we doing in terms of reparation policies for the victims and the relatives? The fourth one is how we remember what happened in the past, how we remember or commemorate those traumatic events. And the last one is, what changes are we doing at the institutional level and also in the culture of citizens so we secure that never again human rights violation occur? And we use a matrix where we put these 5 pillars, and then we mention exactly what are our achievements and what are the pending challenges per each pillar. So, for example, it took us in Chile 20 years to inaugurate the Museum of Memory. It took us 25 years to create the Undersecretariat for Human Rights. It took 20 years to create the National Institute on Human Rights. So it has taken, this has been step by step, and to be very honest with you, only because of the pressure coming from victims and human rights organizations. And they are the ones who are providing the energy to continue. The third comment I want to transfer to you is that this requires the participation and contributions from multiple disciplines. You can't rely on just one center of gravity. Transitional justice involves knowledge from the laws professors and students and practitioners, but also from anthropologists, psychologists, not only clinical psychologists, also social psychologists, medicine, all the subdisciplines from medicine, journalism, the engineers, arts, sociology, history, archaeology, biology, chemistry. I mean, you need to start working together, crossing boundaries, trespassing information from one department to another, and so on. The fourth is that this requires building bridges between the state and civil society. Human rights organizations are working in Chile with universities, pushing public officers to try harder to offer reparations and justice to victims and so on. So I foster participatory process. And the last thing, it took us a long time to understand in Chile that we need the participation of victims and their families. That is indispensable for identifying all the harms and also in turn shaping comprehensive reparation policies. We started in our transition with a very bureaucratic mind, believing that all the solutions were going to come out from the offices of bureaucrats. And that wasn't correct, because the decisions sometimes they took was not appropriate for the needs of victims. And that's why I hope you have a full participatory process with victims. So I leave it here. I hope these 4 ideas help you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rojas. Thank you. Wow, indeed, that was such a fascinating presentation. There's so much, insight and policy prescriptions you offer us on this last slide. I was really moved and couldn't help but find parallels between your comments and your work, your impressive work with use of AI in identifying perhaps missing persons, and I can't help but draw some parallels to the work of Ukrainian prosecutors, of Ukrainian civil society organizations who are identifying children who are using source information to identify the identities of the suspects of war crimes and tracking their locations and identities. There's indeed a lot of interesting parallels, and I think you offer some really valuable guidance and suggestions and ideas and experiences to share. And the last point, which really hit me, was your reference to the time and the long arc of moral justice, and how that I should say the long arc of the moral universe, as Martin Luther King quoted, and how justice tends to bend towards history eventually, and coming back eventually to find justice, I should say, after so many years of your work there. So I congratulate you on your achievements with this research. So well done. I move on to our last panelist. It's a pleasure to turn back around from Brazil to Chile, and then coming back around again to Argentina. With us is Mr. Ignacio Montes de Oca, and I understand you have some really fascinating observations to share with us on justice processes in Argentina, including one topic we haven't discussed just yet, which is the use of universal jurisdiction. So it's amazing to hear about that experience and also your observations from Argentina. Please.
Thank you to the organizers and the Ukrainian people for the hospitality. But since I came to Ukraine, I changed some of my point of view about the war. Because of this, I need to change my speak and improvise. And because of this, I will speak in Spanish for those who have no the device. Okay. Turn to Spanish. Bueno.
Коли мене запросили, я подумав, що ж я можу зробити, Латинська Америка може зробити для України. Як вона може допомогти У нас є технологія дуже важлива, тому що ми пережили процес диктатури між 76 до 83 року, коли були політичні вбивства і були особи, які були зникли з безвісті і викрадені діти, так само, як зараз відбувається в Україні. Я подумав, що ми можемо внести, з яким своїм досвідом можемо поділитися. Я завершую цю панель і Уря розповідав про Бразилію, інший панеліст розповідав про Чилі. А що ж може зробити Латинська Америка? Коли ми вийшли з цього етапу диктатури, я опублікував книгу «Ніколи знову». Не тільки означає «ніколи знову», а також, що це зовсім не повинно мати місце. Ніколи. Досвід латиноамериканців допомагає думати про майбутнє і робити план для того, щоб разом працювати. Тому що в Україні перше питання постає, як ми, латиноамериканці, можемо допомогти. Солідарність – це прекрасно, але цього мало. Також фінансові ресурси – це також замало. Емпатія – також це замало. Коли ви розумієте об'єм, кількість кримінальних злочинів, які скоїла Росія.
Primero hay que explicarle a la gente qué es lo que está sucediendo, pero tenemos poderosa. Es muy poderosa. Son horribles fabricando tanques. Horribles. Sus torres.
Right now, Russia is producing a lot of tanks.
Tenemos que lograr llegar al público. Cuando digo tenemos es porque ya no se trata de ustedes. Esto no es solamente Ucrania. Esto es una lucha.
This is not only about Ukraine. This is about democracy, freedom. It's about human rights. The experience of Latin America. What we need to fight this huge amount of propaganda. Russia is disseminating propaganda together with China, Iran. There is the Span TV channel, which is translated into Portuguese. And everything Putin says, they just repeat it. So do we, as Uriah said. This is applicable not only to the left, but also to what many people and their support for Russian propaganda. But we need to start and coordinate our activities more. We need to ensure more coordination. We need to tell that we are free people and we need to resist this propaganda. Okay, so we need to improve our communication. We need to tell stories about different things to make sure that we work with data. Because there is aggressor, there are victims, and the aggressor commits killings and murders. And we need to collect data, collect information. How many missiles were launched by Russia since the start of the war? How many missiles were targeting hospitals, schools, residential buildings? How many children were abducted, where they are? We need to find names of perpetrators to identify them. All these things, data, information, documenting, we need all this information to counter propaganda. We need to focus on the facts. And also, we need to understand that we are on the right side. Once in the future this war will be over, Ukraine will be victorious, that's a spoiler. But our task will not end there. Our job will be to make sure that it doesn't recur, it doesn't repeat itself. We need to work with the justice system that right now is imperfect. We need to work and make sure that perpetrators are held accountable, and not when they are old. That's why we need this data, we need this evidence about these children, 20,000 children, and we need to understand what we are going to do after the war. We should not forget about this. And the forgettance is a form of impunity. When there is no justice, when we forget things, it's the worst that can happen. We have to work with assets, seized assets from Russia. We need to use them to compensate Ukraine. And every perpetrator, we need to identify them. We need to understand where they are, what they do. And this is a huge scope of work. And in my book, Never Again, I indicated all the places and names and all victims of these crimes. We have to do that. And not only for Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine has the priority, but there is information that we share with everyone, and this information is accessible not only to Ukrainians. We need to think not only about the future, we need also to fight the propaganda. The governments, they come and go, but Ukrainians' intentions, they remain unchanged. And the pressure, public pressure and diplomatic efforts are important in this regard. We need to provide more information to inspire hope, inspire empathy from other governments. This is the plan for us, for what we have to do. I gave the names Ruiseñor, which means nightingale. This is a bird, very famous bird in Ukraine. And when somebody listens to a nightingale, They are consumed by this song. This is a beautiful song by this bird, and the truth should be as beautiful as it is. And apart from justice, memory is also important. And we need to do better to make sure that different journalists, different outlets work together in Ukraine, as well as in other countries like Nigeria, in other conflicts, but we can start here in Ukraine. We have the tools, we have the motives and intentions of the perpetrators. There are 500 million people speaking Spanish, and we can talk to them. We can talk to them about these crimes, and this is a very powerful tool, powerful weapon. It can kill propaganda, however powerful it is. If we do this together, if we concentrate our efforts, because the truth is on our side, and our enemy and the propaganda they are spreading, they will be defeated. And we will fight for this and do our best. Thank you.
Marks, we've just heard from you. I know our time is really running low, and I understand, Uriah, maybe you need to take off shortly here. Sure, understood. Okay, great. I think with time limitations running low, if there's any questions from the audience, we could quickly squeeze in here in the last few minutes before closing this panel. I would turn to the audience now. So, any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, first of all, to the organizers and the panelists for this great and interesting discussion. My name is Ivan Fichko. I am the leading specialist on Latin America at the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism. And just before the panel, I gave an interview to one Ukrainian TV channel about the sensitive and discussable topic about the US actions towards Venezuela. And here I think we have a dilemma, because on the one hand, we can all agree that Venezuela regime is authoritarian and the democracy should be restored in Venezuela. But on the other hand, we understand that when US takes any actions in Venezuela, then Moscow propaganda, Russian propaganda in the region start to talk that if US do this, so let's do anything in Ukraine, for example, or in any other part of our hemisphere, because due to this false narrative, it's like the same situation. So my question to the panelists, do you see the risk here, and how can we stand to this? How can we prevent these narratives and this propaganda, and explain that this is completely different situation? Thank you.
Please.
So I think that, of course, here maybe our colleagues from the region are very well equipped with the answers. But I think that from the legal point of view, there is a very important exception which deals with Russia's actions, which we will not see in Venezuela if something happens, and which we do not see in other regions, in other armed conflicts. Russia commits attempted annexation. And attempted annexation was committed after the World War II only once before Russia's attempted annexations of Ukraine's regions. I think that this is the biggest exception and biggest argument that neither the United States nor any European major power never went for something which could amount to attempted annexation. And I think that this is the greatest difference. And Moscow will always use analogies. They will say, no, Crimea was not the first, because there were something in Balkans, there was something in other regions. We shouldn't listen to that. I think that the legal answer is this attempted annexation. This is really sine qua non of Russia's illegal actions.
Let's start in Ukraine. Then we see.
Perhaps Dr. Alamino or Dr. Rojas online, any comments from your side on that question? Maybe not.
Well, I agree with Dr. Kornievich. It's a different perspective when we talk about Venezuela. It may be we may face some aggressions against Venezuela with the attacks coming from the United States that are maybe planned, we don't really know, and which and some that are now occurring in the sea. However, there's a big difference, as was pinpointed by Dr. Kornevich. It's aggression. It may be an aggression, but there's no comparison with the temptation, the tentative of annexation by the Russian Federation of parts or the entire Ukraine to its territory. So both are aggressions, but different kinds of it. And the Ukrainian one is more troublesome due to this annexation problem.
Thank you. I think I saw one more hand up. Yes, please.
Hello, Igor Belyan, Detector Media and expert network of Crimea platform. I have a question about accountability of Russian propaganda actors, because we do hope that all these people who were spreading Russian propaganda all across the world, including in America, will be held accountable. And my question is following how Latin America can help us in this. Thank you.
How can Latin America help? With resources, with cooperation, with support in terms of I don't know how to explain this, but it's in the media, in the social networks, we are 500 millions of people. Is enough support for you? Look, Ukraine needs many things, but especially not to be alone. We can support you, we can send you many things, but without this support, if you are alone, nothing happens. We also can send you soldiers if you want, but if you don't need this artillery. You need artillery. Okay, that never happens. We only can send you or support or empathy. Sorry, but it's the reality.
Can I jump in this question?
Yes, please.
I agree. From Latin America, we are supporting Ukraine fully. We are ready to trespass all the knowledge we have and the experiences and the lessons that have been painful for decades, but we are ready to transfer all of this information to Ukraine when you need it. It could be remotely or by present, as some of our friends from Latin America are with you today. Unfortunately, Latin America has a history of aggressions from the United States. And this is not only in the Cold War, it began before. We can remember what happened in Puerto Rico, in Cuba, the military coups organized by the CIA and the US, in Guatemala, and in Chile, and among other countries. We have suffered in Latin America the application of the national security doctrine taught in the School of the Americas in Panama by the US Army to our military personnel. We have suffered for decades the notion of the internal enemy. So we know what is to be under the aggression of a country without the possibilities to defend our most fundamental rights. But we stood up, we resisted, and we protected our sovereignty. There are many pending issues, as my colleague said. This will take decades, but please, Latin America is with Ukraine, and it will be with Ukraine at all times for the suffering you have and the unjust of Russian hostility and activity against you.
We need to create this support. We need to work in this support. I am talking about this, yeah. Yet, it's not enough, but we need to work for increase the support.
I think that's perhaps a good final word to stop on. Let's thank our very talented panelists online, Dr. Rojas, Dr. Alamino, Dr. Anton Kornievich, and of course, Mr. Montes with us as well. Thank you so much.